Hi, my name is Caitlin Horrocks, and I'm an art therapist working here in the Finger Lakes region in New York at a trauma clinic that also provides free therapy for victims of crime, as well as school-age children, couples counseling, play therapy, the whole works. And I'm actually here today to talk to you a little bit about what it's like to be an art therapist and how I created my business, Origami Therapy. So a little bit about art therapy. I became an art therapist because I really wanted to be able to combine my passion for art with my desire to help people in my career. So just like any other therapist or social worker, I had to get my bachelor's and my master's. I had to complete an exam that was for my licensing and my board certification. I had to do 100 hours of client contact under supervision, and I have to do continuing education every year in order to maintain my knowledge and make sure that I'm as up to date as possible. So taking care of all that boring stuff and getting it out of the way. The greatest thing I think about being an art therapist is that I can use more than just verbal language skills. So if I'm working with children, or I'm working with older adults, or people who are struggling with aphasia or verbal delays, we can still communicate, and we can do that by using art techniques rather than having to have all the words needed. It was a few years after getting my license that I started finding opportunities to use origami in my sessions. Origami has always been one of my passions, even though I don't look it. I'm a quarter Japanese. My grandmother is Japanese and had taught my sister and I how to fold origami cranes and balloons when we were really, really little. And as I got older, I kind of took that interest in that cultural piece and really grew it and started learning to make all my own things. I originally learned a lot of origami shapes out of a book written in Japanese, which I don't read very well. And I was able to then start looking at videos and tutorials online, which I don't normally recommend that people use because they can be very confusing and very overwhelming. But because I've been building this skill for so long, I've been able to take those things and really make them useful for myself. And then I started thinking, well, I feel like I can help make these more useful for other people. So I started using some really basic things like the 3-minute butterfly, which we're going to do today. Things like the paper crane, an origami house, and turning them into therapeutic interventions. And it was within the last year that I really thought I need to really put this out there and take my expertise in therapy and my expertise in origami and really share them with everybody. And that's how I created Origami Therapy. So I have a website, I have an Instagram, a Facebook, I do workshops across the state. I do little workshops locally. That way people in my community and other therapists can learn how to use origami therapeutically. I do all kinds of fundraisers and festivals when they're having them. And I'm really working to kind of put my passion out there and help people understand how origami can be therapeutically beneficial. So I can only guess what a lot of you are thinking, which is, how is origami therapeutic? The few times that I've tried it, it was really frustrating. I was really worried about getting everything perfect. The instructions were hard to follow. It was really confusing. And that's why I don't recommend trying to learn online. There are a few videos on YouTube that can be really, really helpful. They go nice and slow. The presenter really explains what they're doing. But I find that the best way to learn origami is to have a live in-person teacher. So I'm really disappointed that we couldn't do this presentation face-to-face so that I could help people. But I'm hoping that we'll be able to get through this together. So keeping that in mind, origami is therapeutic for those reasons. So we all have times in our lives where we get really frustrated, really overwhelmed, feel like we just can't do something and we want to give up. And origami is a really great controlled way to experience that and experience success. So we get really frustrated and feel like we can't do something, and then with hand over hand or slowing it down and trying it a different way, clients can figure it out. And they feel it builds their self-efficacy, it builds their confidence, and it starts building that sense of things can be hard, but I can still succeed. A lot of people get really worried thinking that it has to be perfect, that all the lines have to be perfectly straight and perfectly lined up. And while precision is very important in doing origami. It is not a necessity. Even if your lines aren't perfect, even if that one fold gets a little wrinkled, in the end, you're still going to end up with a really beautiful piece of paper artwork. So I find that that's really beneficial for a lot of people. So in doing all that, we're building our frustration tolerance, we're building patience, we're working on spatial skills. It uses both sides of the body, both sides of the brain, and that's really healthy for us. In general, it's just a really great opportunity to experience success, to have to work through frustrations, and it's really good for building a relationship with somebody. In addition to just those basic intrinsic therapeutic values of doing origami, I've been able to take a few different origami techniques and turn them into therapeutic interventions. So interventions are specific activities that somebody would do to elicit a specific kind of response. So one of my favorite things to do is to take part of the house tree person assessment that is really popular and one of the basic assessments we learn in art therapy, and do part of it origami or with origami. So what I do is I have my clients make an origami house. We work through that together, and then they can decorate the outside of the house, add their family into the house, and then they can draw what's inside the house. So each time you start to unfold this house, you get more and more information. And what I really like about this is a lot of times when we just have somebody draw a picture of a house, we see this beautiful, perfect outside, but we don't get to see all the stuff that's going on the inside. So sometimes it's really fun, family-oriented stuff. Other times it's kind of scary and it's really sad. And by allowing children to draw that and then close it up means that they can still protect what's going on inside while still being able to share with their therapist what's going on inside. And I found this to be much more helpful and much more therapeutic than just having them draw a house. I've also done the origami balloon, and what's really cool about that is when you're all done, you have to blow it up. And so there's a little hole at the bottom of the balloon that you blow into. And obviously if you blow too hard, it's going to get all spittled up. It's going to fall apart. It could blow right out of their hands. But if they blow firmly, but not too hard, they're going to get this nice poofy balloon. And that's a really good way to practice deep breathing. You know, when we breathe, we want to really focus on the outward breath and having control over it. So I find that those two are both really beneficial therapeutic activities. And one that I've used, I think, most frequently has been the origami butterfly. So I love doing this because it's nice and fast. Once you get it done, or get the pattern down, you can literally make one of these in just a couple minutes. And I was really inspired by a song that I listened to that a client had shared with me from Steven Universe, which I'm going to attempt to play for you, where they use butterflies to represent negative thoughts. And I was like, oh, that is such a good metaphor because we can let the butterfly just go. We don't have to keep holding on to those thoughts. So I started an activity in which I have my clients write down on the paper before we fold it their negative thought. We fold it up and turn that negative, nasty, ugly thought into something really beautiful. And then they get to decide what to do with the butterfly. So some people like to display it to remind themselves that they can let that thought go. Some people like to tear them up. Some people like to even burn them. I don't recommend that in most situations. You need to make sure you're very safe. But there's all kinds of things you can do with the butterfly in the end. So if anybody ever were to come to my office, they will find that I have origami butterflies all over the place. And some of those are my negative thoughts that I've done with clients. A lot of those are my clients' negative thoughts that they don't want to hold on to. And so we put them up in my office.
Take a moment to think of just flexibility, love, and trust. Take a moment to think of just flexibility, love, and trust. Here comes a thought that might alarm you. What someone said and how it harmed you. Something you did that felt to be charming. Things that you said are suddenly swarming. Oh, you're losing sight, you're losing touch. All these little things seem to matter so Take a moment and find yourself. Take a moment to ask yourself if this is how we fall apart. But it's not, but it's not, but it's not, but it's not, but it's not. It's okay, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. You've got nothing, got nothing, got nothing, got nothing to fear. I'm here, I'm here, I'm here. Here comes a thought that might alarm me. What someone said and how it harmed me. Something I did that failed to be charming. Things that I said are suddenly swarming. And oh, I'm losing sight, I'm losing touch. All these little things seem to matter so much that they confuse me. That I might lose me. Take a moment, remind yourself to take a moment and find yourself. Take a moment and ask yourself if this is how we fell apart. But it's not, but it's not, but it's not, but it's not, but it's not. It's okay, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. I've got nothing, got nothing, got nothing, got nothing to fear. I'm here, I'm here, I'm here. And it was just a thought, just a thought, just a thought, just a thought, just a thought. It's okay, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. We can watch, we can watch, we can watch, we can watch them go by. From here, from here, from here. Take a moment to think of just flexibility, love, and trust. Take a moment to think of just flexibility, love, and trust.
So I really love the metaphor used in this video. You know, butterflies are beautiful, more or less harmless, but they can be really overwhelming. So just like thoughts can be more or less harmless, they can be very overwhelming. I also really like how they use the swarm of butterflies, that oftentimes one negative or pervasive thought leads to a whole bunch of them. And that's part of why our anxiety spikes. It's part of why we start getting maybe a little bit short-tempered with people, because we're so consumed and overwhelmed with this swarm of negative thoughts that we can't overcome it. So if you have any questions or want to see this full video, it's on YouTube. It's called Here Comes a Thought. The main singer is Estelle. It's a really great video. I'm not super familiar with the rest of Steven Universe. It was actually a previous client that showed me this video, and she's like, it really spoke to me. And things kind of snowballed from there in terms of coming up with this idea. But definitely check it out. Check out other Steven Universe. I hear it's a really great show, that they have lots of really inspirational songs like that, and that just in general, the message is really nice. So. Okay, so I'm going to ask everybody to please grab a piece of paper. If you don't have a perfectly square piece of paper, like typically is used in origami, that's okay. I'm going to quickly show you how to turn a standard piece into a square piece. So most origami is done with a square piece, but like I said, I know not everybody has a huge collection of origami paper like I do. So if you get just a standard piece of 11 by 8 or some sort of drawing paper, it's really easy to turn it into a square. And I'm sure most of you know this, but I want to show you guys just in case. So the first step you're going to do is take your shorter edge and you're going to line it up with the longer edge, and it's going to create a triangle with a little tail. So you just take the short edge and we're going to line it up right here with that longer edge. And once you have it as straight as you can, you're going to squish down that crease. And now you have your triangle with your little tail. So you have a couple options. You can, of course, always use scissors, or you can tear it. So if you're going to use scissors, all you got to do is cut along this line here. You're welcome to draw the line and open up your paper and cut it. Or you can do what I always do, which is just to tear it off. That can be a little bit tricky though if you're not used to tearing things. But all you're going to do is fold over that little flap over the triangle. You're going to give it a really good crease either with your fingernail or the edge of the scissors, a bone creaser if you have one, although I know most people don't. And then I like to flip it the other way and crease it again. So you have that really good flap. And then once you have that, you can tear it right off, in theory. Here we go. If you're worried or if it ends up creating a really messy edge or tearing onto the paper, that's okay. Just cut it. So this is your standard piece, although I really like the feel of origami paper, so I am going to switch to that. So the first step to creating your therapeutic origami butterfly is to write down your negative thought. So if you have paper that is colored on one side but not on the other, you want to make sure and write it on the back side, the uncolored side. And this is nothing that you have to share with anybody. I just want you to write it down for yourself so you can be as honest as possible, as open as possible. For now, I'm just going to write down negative thought so that you have an example, and that way you know where the writing is going to be. So once you've written that down, we're going to flip this over so you don't look at that negative thought for now, and we're going to start folding. So the first step for this 3-minute butterfly is to fold it into a rectangle. So we're going to fold one edge to the opposite edge. So again, you want to be as precise as possible, but also give yourself some wiggle room. If it's not perfect, do not stress, okay? Once we've done that, we're going to unfold it, and then we're going to fold the opposite edge. And we're going to make a rectangle in the opposite direction. And what this is going to do is create a little plus sign through the middle of our paper. Once we've done that, we're going to flip the whole thing over. Now you can see your negative thought, but I don't want you to focus too hard on it. And now we're going to fold it into a triangle. And we do that by folding one point to the opposite point. Okay. And we're going to unfold it one more time, and then we're going to fold our other 2 points together. And what this is going to do is create what I call the British flag shape in the middle of our paper. So we got an X and a plus sign going through it. But this last fold you didn't have to undo. I was just showing you that shape. You're going to leave it as a triangle. Now what I'm going to have you do is you're going to pick it up. You're going to hold each of the triangles that are touching your long edge, and you're just going to rotate your hands together. And when you do that, if I flip it up, you'll see that that's going to open up like a bird beak. And you're going to touch those together. So then you have this little flip-flop shape. And when you turn to the side, I've been told it looks like an angelfish. All right. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take one of your flaps and you're going to fold it up to another one. And then you're going to take your other flap and you're going to fold it to the opposite one. So you're going to have 2 flaps on either side. And what I like to do after I do that, because you can see it's bubbling a little bit because my paper is not perfectly square and I was not perfect with my lines, is I'll set it down on the table and I will just give it one good crease to make sure everything's nice and flat. And you'll see when you look at all the sides, you can't see that negative thought anymore. It's already hidden on the inside. So with an upside down triangle with the point facing towards you, what I want you to do is take this long bottom edge. You're going to take half of it and fold it into this center line by creasing on this diagonal. So I'm going to show you and then I'll undo it and show you again. We're going to take this bottom edge, just that 1/2, and we're going to fold it to that center line. And you see it creates this crease right through the middle. I'm going to fold it right in like that. And because origami is generally pretty symmetrical, we're going to do the same thing with this side. Still folding it into the center crease. And you see it's going to create a diamond within our big triangle. So we've got these 2 flaps that come together like that. All right. Now we're going to flip it over, the whole thing, flip it over. So now the triangle point is facing away from your body. Now this step tends to throw people off a little bit, so I want you to watch me do it and then try it yourself. What we're going to do is take the point of the triangle, but just the top point. We're going to leave those two little flaps that we made earlier down. We're going to take that top point and we're going to fold it all the way up past the long edge of the triangle, all the way past it. And you can see when I do that, these little flaps start coming up, and you'll see that I have this weird little bend in my paper. It's going to be very, very tempting to squish that down, but don't do that. Try really hard to avoid doing that. So we're going to fold it up just past that top edge. If you fold it way up, that's okay. It just means that you're going to have a bigger bend. If you only fold it up a little bit, that's okay too. It just means you might have to use a little bit of tape or glue in order to keep your butterfly together. But however much you do it is okay. It's not a very specific amount. So we have our top point folded past the long bottom line. We have our little flaps from our previous step pointing up, and we have this little bend here, and it almost makes like a little chair. Okay, so holding this point to the flat edge, pinching it between your fingers like this, I want you to flip it over, and then still holding it together. You can see the little triangle point pointing over the edge of the other side. We're just going to fold that down over that edge, and it creates like a little hook. So I don't know if you guys can see the butterfly already coming together, but this is my favorite step because one, it's super easy, and two, this is where it all comes together and makes the form. So using this center line that we created when we folded these little flaps down and folding over this little triangle, we're going to fold the whole thing in half, and we're going to pinch it really good. So you can see on this side, I'm pinching it nice and tight. And when you let go, it creates a butterfly. So I have this pretty little purple butterfly. You might have a white butterfly. The wonderful thing about using plain white paper is that you can then decorate it. My sister is amazing at making these things look like these realistic monarch butterflies. But that's it. So now your negative thought has been turned into this beautiful butterfly that, like I said, you can either let it go and fly away. You can display it somewhere to remind yourself of the negative thought that you've been able to overcome, as well as the new therapeutic skill you have learned. It's really up to you how you want to use these. So that's it. Nice and easy. I love it because it's generally something that's pretty easy for people to learn and to memorize. Please feel free to watch the video as much as possible. I also put a link to my blog down in the comments, and it'll take you directly to a picture of the instructions that I drew myself, so it should match the way that I teach it. It'll also link you to the YouTube video if you want to watch that Steven Universe song again. And I'll also have a whole bunch of information for you on origami therapy and how I use origami in art therapy. I hope to be able to see people at some festivals in the near future. I know this summer's kind of out, but I'm really hoping for next year. I teach classes at the Rochester Brainery as well as Sylvan Starlight Creations in Pittsburgh. Hopefully more to come soon. And I'm hoping to sell some of my origami jewelry at Carpenter's Farm and Fancy in Kent, New York. But I do currently sell it on Etsy, Amazon Handmade, and at Sylvan Starlight Creations. So if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact me. You saw on the card was my email address. I'll also put it in the comments down below. And you can always message me through Instagram or Facebook as well. Thank you very much for listening to my presentation, and I hope you were able to learn a lot. Thank you.